At this point, we're doing really well.
Yeah, let's cut this initial part of it, Stephen.
Okay, and now you're not muted.
Okay, all right. So first of all, I want to welcome everybody here at Skagit Valley College in Mount Vernon, and also Skagit Valley College over on San Juan Island in Friday Harbor, and also all the people who are tuning in by Zoom. So welcome to this meeting. I have to tell you, I'm just so happy to introduce people who I have known for a while, studied with, and just think what they're putting together here is so magnificent. Here's what we're going to do tonight. First of all, Brandon Letchinger and Claire Atwell, who are the people who founded Regenerate Cascadia, and also Joe Brewer, who is coming up here, and he is a brilliant designer of regenerative resilient communities, and he's going to share all of his wisdom and knowledge with us, and also listen to all of your wisdom and knowledge. This is going to be a two-way street, right? So the format is very simple. Initially, they're going to come up, spend about 15 minutes just kind of giving you an overview of Regenerate Cascadia, an overview of what Joe is going to be talking about, and then we're going to open it up for people to come up to the mic. Now, is this going to be sitting here or over there? And so people are going to come up here and talk about what they're doing. And particularly, we want to really explore not only who they are and what they're doing, but what their feelings are about the challenges we're facing in the San Juans and Skagit Valley. What are the assets that we have? The geological assets of the very beautiful region that we're in, our environment, our human assets, and financial assets to really begin to help transform our communities to be more resilient and regenerative. Joe will then come up, and he is going to, based on what everything that he hears, is going to share his thoughts about how all of his work integrates with it, and how we can all come together in our communities and join together, particularly up in this area. And hopefully, what seems to be the case is very exciting about their tours so far in other communities throughout the Cascadia bioregion. So for tonight, that'll be it. And then after Joe talks, Brandon and Claire will come back for some final thoughts. And then we're going to just open it up for questions for anybody who wants to discuss or any comments. So without further ado, I would like to invite up here Brandon Letchinger, Claire Atwell, and Joe Brewer to share their feelings about what they want to accomplish with this meeting. So come on up.
Thank you. Do you guys want to start, or should I do a little context setting first? Well, it sounds best. Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Joe Brewer. It's Brandon and Claire, and I want them to stand next to each other because it's such a great team. We are here actually at the end of a 30-day journey. You are our last group to speak with before we take a little break and integrate and hold and synthesize what's been happening for us in the last 30 days. And I just want to briefly summarize that we began a process on October 2nd that took us through various communities having the same conversation in each place to be able to weave into those communities and weave among those communities. And so just want to name briefly the sequence of places that we visited so that you can get a feel for what it means to weave the same conversation in multiple places. Because we started in the Columbia River Gorge at a place called Celilo Falls, which is a sacred site, the oldest documented archaeological site of indigenous peoples engaging in trade in the North, and actually all of the Americas, going back at least 15,000 years. So possibly longer, but at least for 15,000 years, indigenous peoples have been meeting at Celilo Falls until 1957, when the Dulles Dam was closed and it was drowned under a lake. And so we were there with the last living member of the tribe of that place to bear witness to the death of a culture, the completion of a genocide, and then also the dream of restoring Celilo Falls to its rightful place in the tapestry of the story of the land. So we started in this very powerful way with a very deep sense of what does it really mean to regenerate Cascadia? This is a very, very deep healing process that we're talking about. And so we went from the Columbia River Gorge to Eugene, Oregon. And then we're in Eugene, Oregon for a few days. After that, we went to Portland, Oregon. And then after Portland, we went to Olympia, Washington. And then after Olympia, we went to Vashon Island. And then after Vashon, we went to Seattle. And then after Seattle, we went to Whidbey Island. And after Whidbey Island, we went to Port Townsend. Then after Port Townsend, we went to Victoria on Vancouver Island. And then after Victoria, we went to Gabriola. And after Gabriola, we went and visited the encampment of the Land Defenders for Fairy Creek, located near the Avatar Grove. And we visited the old growth red cedars so that we could commune with the trees. And then after that, we went to Bellingham and the Nooksack watershed. And now we're here. And then after we're here tonight, we're going back to Seattle. And in the span of 30 days, we've been having a conversation about what would it take to create the learning ecosystems where we weave together the existing ways of learning about each place, together with the ways of governing, the ways of creating priorities and mapping of projects and sharing of knowledge to create governance and funding collaboratively developed within the communities at the watershed scale and between watersheds across the entire Cascadia bioregion. And just for those who don't know, or just as a refresher, the Cascadia bioregion is a name that was created in the mid-1970s to early 80s. And every place that we went, we met originators and elders of this movement. And we've actually been able to conduct video interviews with them and document some of this oral history. And the Cascadia bioregion is defined geologically around watersheds for all of the watersheds that drain into the Salish Sea, which includes the Fraser River going all the way up to Jasper in the Canadian Rockies. And then all the watersheds that drain into the Columbia Basin, which includes 174 rivers draining into the Columbia, ranging basically from southern Alaska to northern California, from the coast inward all the way to Wyoming, because the Snake River that drains out of Yellowstone drains into the Columbia River. So there's this massive geographic range. And in every place we've gone, we're having conversations about planetary collapse and the state of the world. The simply stated, but very difficult to process fact that human extinction is a real possibility in our near future, that we're in grave, grave risk. And in this moment, we must fundamentally transform the human relationship to the planet. And that this involves deep collaboration between indigenous peoples and those who come from the modern world who care about restoring life and acting in service to life. And that we need to organize around landscapes and tapestries of landscapes and create nested levels all the way up to the planetary scale. And we're holding conversations about how to do this in Cascadia. And as Brandon and Claire will describe a little bit about the story of Regenerate Cascadia and why it's needed, you'll start to see that there is a tapestry to be woven of what are probably thousands or tens of thousands of regenerative projects in the Cascadia bioregion that don't know about each other, that are not working with each other, and that are not organized around the landscapes that they live within. And so I want to pass it over to them to tell a little of the story of Regenerate Cascadia, and then we'll be able to hold space for how this very, very timely and important vision can relate to the work that needs to be done and that is being done in the San Juans and in the Skagit Valley, where we know that we are entering a place that has a very long history of this kind of work. So we really come with full deference and full humility to honor what is here and also help what is here to weave itself into the future. I'd love to pass it over to Brandon and Claire to tell a little bit about Regenerate Cascadia.
Yeah, so I'm Claire Atwill. I live in Victoria, and I just want to say it has been amazing to have Joe, Penny, and Steve along with us. So before I introduce myself, I just want to say this is the last day, and it just feels amazing, so. So I live in Victoria, across the Salish Sea in Canada, and I work as a community artist and met Brandon during the Edge Prize, which was an initiative put on by Salmon Nation and the Terang Collective earlier this year, and we'll talk more about it, but I'm gonna let Brandon just introduce himself too.
Thanks, Claire. My name is Brandon Letzinger, and for those of you not familiar with my work, I was the founder of Cascadia Now in 2005, and stepped back from that in about 2016 and 17, and then more recently, the founding director of the Department of Bioregion. And so in our work, we really want to explore how we can better connect this idea and ideas like Cascadia and bioregional movements to the principles of bioregionalism. And more than just here in Cascadia, what are the other bioregions in the world, and who is working actively to help steward those regions, and how can we be connecting that work all together? So meeting Claire and getting to work with Joe on the Regenerate Cascadia project and in the design school for Regenerating Earth has just been really wonderful. And I think something that's really important is that Claire and I, when we've been on this tour and when we, throughout this entire project, we are coming with questions. The question is how do we regenerate the Cascadia bioregion? How do we regenerate the different watersheds within it? And I think that that's really important because we don't have the answers and we don't know the answers. But I think what became clear in our experience in the Edge Prize in Salmon Nation is that the work is being done in the communities, and that's already happening. And so more than starting something new, we really felt it was important to network and connect the work that's already happening, and then to ask the question, how can we empower that work? And how can we come together as an entire community and watershed with all of the different regenerative projects, communities, those that are most impacted and affected by a lot of these decisions? How can we come together and start weaving our stories together and working together collaboratively rather than as individual one-off projects that are competitive?
Yeah, so one of the things that is absolutely confirmed in going into all of the different communities is people who are doing the work are so busy doing the work that they're doing that it does require an initiative to start networking and connecting what's happening so that we're not taken away from the important work that's being done. And people are, things are pretty fragile right now. People are working to their absolute limits. So how do we bring people together so that they're not stretched past that, but are connected in a way that feels coherent? And as this process has been going on, is really, we're starting to see how some of those pieces are coming together. So this online summit that we're going to be hosting, that will be starting in a few days' time, we'll start to bring together some of the people that were, we didn't by any means, it's only a sampling touch the people that are in those areas, but we've got enough people coming from those areas to really start to catalyze the conversations. And
Yeah, and I think within that, a few of the things that we're really hoping to do is come together as a group and really explore creating a shared vision on a regional framework, really helping develop and connect people to a story of their place that helps root them into what makes this area special, what is the history, what are the different ways to appropriately live within the context of place. And as a part of that, building an informational commons that can help build bioregional frameworks. What are the watersheds? What is the carrying capacity? And how are we sharing that information to each other? More than that, I think that also then starts to build this regenerative movement map of the different communities and projects in a specific area. And then how do we come together to actually make decisions together? How do we get the projects in each community funded and the people supported to do the work that we all need? And when we come together and we start building that regenerative movement map, what's really powerful is not just the voices that are in this room today, but we can also start to visualize the voices that are missing from this room, and we can reach out and start to invite them in. And once we started to do that, we can actually start to have discussions around how we make decisions together, how we allocate funding, how we co-budget. And once we start to do that, we've started a conversation of governance, and we think that that's really important.
Yeah, maybe just to emphasize one other area that you've already touched on, but is with that coherent storytelling, we can start to put together a budget to fund this work. And we know that there are people that really want to fund this work. It's just that the coherence and the storytelling hasn't been there. And it's actually a really big part of the reason why someone like Joe, who has really helped to tell that story coherently, has been such a boost, because yeah, it does take that. Yeah.
And I'll just end with, we're in each community for a very short window. So we are leading into an online summit that'll be starting this weekend. So it'll be Friday, November 3rd through November 12th. And we're breaking it up as kind of a capstone event, working within the realities of how much time and energy that we have. And so, but with that understanding, what we wanted to do was create a space where everybody could come together, because we're getting to witness these really amazing, inspirational projects happening in each area. And, but we're only in each area for 1 or 2 days, and then we're disappearing. So space where everybody can come together, talk with each other, and where we can really start to connect and weave and share those together. So that first weekend will be a space for anybody to give presentations and discussions. We'll have watershed report backs during the week. And then the second weekend will be an open space Cascadia Unconference, where we'll be able to come together. People can host discussions and themed work groups on bioregional media, bioregional education, learning centers, you know, anything that they feel passionate about. And then we're going to be working together to decide what Regenerate Cascadia looks like into the future.
So maybe just to finish up, is just to say, this is about helping to catalyze the work in your communities. It's not where you need to do that with your own flavor. Every community is going to be different. And we want to know how we can support you do the work that you're doing brilliantly. A lot of the time it's just that it's not seen. No.
And just as a process point, if you didn't sign up here, you can sign up to join Regenerate Cascadia or regeneratecascadia.org. And the summit is free and open to anyone who'd like to attend. So please join in that. And now we'll pass it over to hear about some of the beautiful local work happening in your community.
And thank you for having us.
Which I'm very excited about.
Great. Well, we are so happy to have Joe and there are other people, as I think Claire has mentioned here, who are on the trip, Stephen Morris and a few other folks. But it's just, to me, it's just very exciting, because I think we have the potential of making things happen. But as has been stated, it all starts locally, and in Skagit County, for me, in Skagit County and the San Juans. So at this point in time, what I think is important is to let these folks know what is happening in our region. And I'm speaking specifically of micro-region, Skagit County, San Juans. What's working? Who are the people who are involved in making things happen? What are their challenges? What are the challenges in the community? What are some of the assets that we've got, as I mentioned before, to deal with these challenges and really begin to build more resilience and regenerative work in our community? So what I'd like to do, first of all, starting in this room, is inviting people in this room up to, and maybe if you could start a line over here, to give about 5 minutes of your work and what your feelings are about what's happening in our community and what is possible. And so we'll start here. We have folks over at the SVC Friday Harbor Labs area. If they want to share their thoughts, they can do that as well. And then we have a lot of people online. And so with the online, I think most of you on Zoom know how to raise your hands. We will then try to take you in order and see where we go. And then, as I said, at that point, Joe will come back. He'll provide his thoughts about all of this. And I think the key, which a young lady in the audience basically suggested, is that this is an organizing opportunity. This is a way for us to come together in Skagit County and in the San Juans and begin to organize and make connections and really take this to a whole nother level. So without further ado, if anybody would like to come up here and make any statements or would like to make any presentations, please do form a line over here. We will also do this in Friday Harbor, and as I said on Zoom, raise your hands. So Stephen, do we have anybody on Zoom right now?
No hands up yet?
Okay, so anybody in this room wants to talk? Please try to keep your presentation to about 5 minutes, and maybe we'll form over here. But would you like to?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you'd like to go first, go ahead.
Well, I don't really like going first, but I must admit that once I heard about this initiative, I was having a great deal of hope because things that had been working here in Skagit Valley for years before COVID had kind of come apart and frayed apart during the last 5 years. We had an excellent Skagit Conservation Education Alliance that was over 30 organizations that worked toward the education of the young people about the specialness of this area. And that particular group was dissolved early this summer. And within about 3 weeks of the time that dissolution occurred, and I had kind of lost hope and things were going even crazier, it seemed like, in the world, and harder for farmers, harder for people who are interested in being close to the land and talking about this place. I heard about this particular design initiative and felt like this is a glimmer of hope, a torch of hope that we can come together and that it's by a greater, broader initiative. Of course, I've been hearing about Cascadia for years and years and years, and some of my best friends of Native descent and relation have like their emails are Cascadia effects and things like that. And I've lived here in the Skagit Valley for a very long time, and before that in the San Juan Islands since the early 70s and mid 70s. So for me, my name is Cindy Bjorklund. This has been a kind of life work for me. I was with the National Park Service and was involved in the inception of the North Cascades Institute and a lot of the other things that were happening. Purchased a small farm that we raised sheep on in the land of the Upper Skagit, where Vi Hilbert and many of the others of the Skagit descent had lived. And I saw personally the story of the past that had occurred here, where the cedar trees had been taken down, and on the bottom of my property, which was a wetland, the cedars had gone away. And so floods came and the water rushed up and down the Skagit River, and the course of the stream was being changed, and we were having big floods, and little salmon were trying to get up through the fields and the hedgerows in the bottom part of the land that I was stewarding. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is horrible. There's nowhere for these salmon to go anymore. It was the biggest coho run, used to be in the Childs Creek, Minkler Lake area of the middle part of the Skagit. And it was no longer happening. The little salmon had nowhere to go. So I researched and found out that the bottom fields, which were primarily wetlands and in the alluvial movement of the Skagit anyway, were excellent places to do the first conservation reserve enhancement project for Skagit County. And we started that in 1999 and continued it, planting every spring and fall with the help of Skagit Fisheries Enhancement Group. and other groups that had been involved in revegetation in this area. And that particular project has been a big part of the success of the return of the coho, both this year and 2 years ago in the Skagit Valley. So I've seen full circle what some of these things can do. And the only cedar that's left down in the bottom of my wetland, because of the wetland even wiping out some of the cedar forest and now coming back in alder and other things, the only cedar left there now is standing with huge stems of 500 to 150-year-old cedars coming right out of that gigantic stump. And you can see it right down in the bottom of the field along the Skagit River. And so anyway, I feel like what it should be a life's work for all of those who call this place home is a part of my life's work that I want to share with many other people and keep it networked up and keep it moving forward, and young people coming into this and continuing this. So this initiative is a real glimmer of hope for me at Childs Creek Farm. Arts and ecology, the connection between the arts, the connection between what we feel and what we need to be able to do that is very light on the land, you know. So that's where I'm coming from, and I'm looking forward to connecting up with some of the people who are here tonight and others that I know are interested in these same things here in the Skagit, which I consider the heartland of the North Cascades ecosystem and the Salish Sea.
That was just terrific. Thank you so much. So who's next? Okay.
Would you like a chair? Or do you want to-
I think I will stand. I'm so grateful they get to stand. Yeah,
Thank you.
indeed. I'm Norma Jean Young. These days I call myself a grandmother healer. I came to this area because of Grandmother Vi Hilbert, Talks You Blue. As a really uneducated white woman and healer, I traveled with her for 4 years, taking her places I didn't even know I was taking her. Her spirit brought me back here. The work I do is to integrate the family of humankind functionally. Right now, that's culminating in a project to bring a home together, a healing home. The home will hold the project H2O, healing and housing for others. These are the areas our cultures are screaming about, or we should be screaming more. In my 78 years, luckily a couple of years ago with the new aortic heart valve, you know, Phoebe and John were part of supporting me during that time. Many of my supporters are right here. August 9th, I had a car wreck driving out of the driveway of Cindy's beautiful Child Creek farm. I've been there on the land of the Upper Skagit, crying, grieving, bringing my body back together. I kept going through it for this beautiful healing home. And as my prayers went out, a house just fell in my lap. A 5-bedroom house, a brick house, a house with an enormous basement that people can gather in and listen to each other, where they know they have some solutions. And most of them come through us, human beings. the grandmothers and grandfathers gathering. It blows me away as I was recovering, needing to hold the leg straight and try to heal a 7-inch by 1-inch raw place that had been scraped from my leg. I'm a healer, all these years of healing. I took no pain pills. I aimed down. I couldn't even reach it. Every time the bone pain came, and the pain went away. I feel like all these years, you know, I've taught Reiki healing in 13 countries, at Harvard, many medical centers, but I've been playing it so low. And right now, we have to wake up. We have to clean up our glass and clean up our healing and clean up the atrocities to our First Nations people. My spirit brought me back. Right now, Ann Stadler, another elder of mine, has just passed. We must have our elders with us. We must have a place together. This is outing my personal just a little bit. But you know, I'd been in 2 places where there were such controlling men over me, suppressing me. I'm bringing an experience right here, shaking the tree of women and men, coming to a place of real harmony and co-creation. April. We must do this work. It wants to happen. That basic man-woman thing is so large. It's not as large as the one with First Nations, Jay. Of course it's not. But we're not competing, which is worse, right? We're here to find some solutions. I kept letting go of this project. Here I am healing. I'm 78. Too old, Norma Jean, you're too old. And it kept coming back. And the house kept not selling. And so I've met with Lisa Janicki because Phoebe came out to the farm to rub my leg, give me healing. And said, Lisa Janicki, that's the only one I can think of. And I just met with her day before yesterday. And it feels like we're creating. I've sent it to 14 other people, the proposal. I hope we'll have a place where we gather and have these conversations, where we have the classes of each of you that has something. Parenting. Staying out of the drama triangle. Of course, healing. I've been sitting on healing cancer. Many cases of metastatic cancer, liver cancer. You're supposed to die. Full remission. There are many natural ways. We know medicine is sick. We know it. Not one of us has been cared for adequately, roundly, or totally humanely. So, my dears, here we all are. And wouldn't you know it, I have a healing school in the Carnation building. We called our first potluck at 6:30. So I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna miss all you beauties, but I had to come because we're in this together. It's one of our natives who said, Tsubiye, I gave to you all differently, so you would need each other. We do. Let's get the job done.
Thank you. So who do we have next?
All right, my name is Haley Lampy, and I wanted to share the work that I do because I believe it helps support some of what I would like to see more in our little part of this fire region, and that is having people feel empowered to make a difference, that their actions matter, and having the learning to do so. I think often many people are searching for a starting point and feel intimidated to find it. So what I spend my professional time doing is helping people find that starting point. So I want to share a little bit about what I do, because it ties into kind of what I hope for this area. So I am a regenerative garden coach and landscape designer through my company Cruising Climate. I empower people to reach their own goals themselves in their backyards, their gardens, their homesteads, and their farms. So I provide the learning, the coaching, the designs, and then I hand those off to allow people to go and then do the work themselves. So they become reconnected to their own soil, to their own ecosystems, to their own ability to make a difference. I always use regenerative growing, and I support people in 3 ways. I help them support their environment, I help support them through learning, and I help support household budgets. Too often regenerative actions are becoming gentrified. So I work on a sliding scale to support all household incomes. I also have a Grow It Forward fund that can cover any part of anyone's project. All they have to do is ask. It's not up to me to decide if that's going to support their budget or not. It is up to them to decide that. I work not just here in the Skagit Valley and the San Juan Islands, but also in person throughout the Puget Sound and virtually anywhere that people would like support. Next slide. These are some examples of ways that I have recently been supporting people. This top one is through helping a woman and her husband grow more food at home. This was her 2nd year of growing, and through our work together, she is going to be able to feed herself and her partner for the entire year. This is an example of some of the soil care routines that I help people feel empowered to do in their own backyards. Like I said, I provide the starting point and I provide the coaching so that people can then take on the actions themselves. This is a 9,000 square foot food forest that I just designed for a client. It's not labeled, but all of these plants are edible. So she and her 2 young sons are going to be able to walk out their front door, and instead of having 9,000 square feet of lawn, they're going to have 9,000 square feet of foraging that they're going to get to go do together in their own front yard. And like I said, I'm going to provide her the design and the knowledge. She and her sons are going to be the ones to install this and take care of this. So once again, empowered to start making the changes themselves. Next slide. So what is regenerative in terms of the world that I work in focusing on our soil health. So when we focus on growing our soil, it kind of inadvertently allows us to use all of our other natural resources more responsibly. And so that's what I support folks in doing. Like I said, in their own backyard, front yard, garden, farm, whatever space they're working in. Ultimately, because cultivating an ecosystem starts with growing the soil, I would also argue that cultivating a community starts with growing your soil as well. That this allows us not just to grow healthier food, but healthier humans too. Next slide, please. All right, so kind of why am I here today and how do I feel what I do is connected to what we are all wanting to do? I think a lot of people feel disconnected from having the power to make a difference, particularly those folks who are living in urban settings, who maybe have smaller properties, smaller yards, and have not been given the agency to grow themselves. So I would like to remind people that ecosystems don't acknowledge property boundaries. This means that our individual work can have community-wide impacts when we get out and we work on our soil. Even if it's 600 square feet of soil in our front yard, that influences our entire community and our entire ecosystem because that boundary doesn't exist in the natural world. And once again, grow your soil to grow community. Our individual actions become collective actions when we all start in the soil together. So that's why I wanted to share this because I think the work that I do helps fill a niche of what I would like to see more of us do. And that is feeling empowered to take some of this action ourselves. And I get to find the joy and the privilege in supporting people in doing that.
Haley, thank you so much.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that I'm actually also wanting everybody to talk about, and I think the work you do, it is absolutely fabulous, and it certainly is part of the whole scene. But I really also want you to give our people from Regenerate Cascadia a better idea of what you feel are what's working in our communities beyond even the work you're doing. What are some examples of what's happening? What are the challenges we face going forward? And what are our assets? What do we have to work with to make this all happen? Those are big questions, and how can we all work together? So some of your thoughts on that would be great.
I think some highly underutilized resources that I wish, like assets that I wish more people would pay attention to are our conservation districts. So often I talk to people who are actively working in the soil, in our ecosystems, in our ag settings, who don't know about our conservation districts. And to me, those people who are actively already working with our wild ecosystems, they should be the most in tune with what our conservation districts are doing. I know that our Skagit Conservation District is very strong, Whidbey Conservation District is very strong, Whatcom County Conservation District, very strong. And I just know that because those are the ones I interact with. I'm not intentionally leaving any out. But I guess just in terms of like what's already working really well and what I would like to see gain momentum is the influence of our conservation districts in our areas.
Great. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Okay, who are you and what?
Hi, everybody.
Come on up.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I didn't know we could have had a presentation. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sunita, or Coach Suni. I work here at Skagit Valley College. I'm on the sustainability committee. Been a regenerative farmer for about 5 years, a gardener 13 years. I have a master's in education for instructional design, and I run a nonprofit called Whatcom Waves. We seek to promote climate, racial, and social justice through sports. So a little bit about our organization is we'll be the first community land trust across the state to build hemp houses. And so part of what we are trying to do is bring awareness of the built environment. My role as Whatcom's Climate Impact Advisory Committee, my role as an educator is to connect the dots. And my role as the vice chair of the Community Development Advisory Board is to really map out what our HUD money, or basically whenever we get notice of funds available, where those should be going. So I've lived in Whatcom County for 21 years. I've worked here at Skagit for a little over a year. And the first day I got hired with the College Success Foundation, I reached out to a neighbor down the hall and said, "Where's our sustainability club? Where's our compost?" And they sent me to a man named Sean Howard, who I graciously accept his offerings of love and teachings. And why I'm here today is that I'd really love to advocate for using not only conservation districts, but sustainability clubs, committees, our institutions that we have here, housing, and using that intersectionality. I was invited as a keynote speaker and was doing a research proposal at the Washington State University's Globalization and Diversity Conference on Noisy Water Living and Learning Community Center. Noisy Water is Whatcom, and as you know, it's a big watershed up in the Fraser Valley to Nooksack, which floods every 100 years or more now. We really have to manage not only our water and our root health and soil health. Thank you for saying that the community of bugs. I'm a worm farmer, and I'm really proud of the soils that we've built with biochar and compost piles. I've actually hurt my finger flipping a pile, which wasn't happening on Saturday night. So I'm really excited to be here as an advocate through change, through sports, because I feel like that we often preach to the choir and in spaces that we're already having a feedback loop. So I want to breach into those spaces like marketing and communications and journalism, and spaces where we're not seen. And I think that approach might be actually more impactful, and that ripple effect might go a long way. I've lived abroad as well in Colombia and India. I've seen some pretty awesome earthworks. I would like to give a shout out to Brian and Howard if you're out there. You guys were my inspiration, and getting to see Inspiration Farm, I guess in year 10, and now I've known Brian for a while, so thank you, Brian. And just really want to share that through the built environment, U.S. Department of Energy's Innovation Award winner for our solar house. we really want to house people. So I work here with former foster youth, and they're the lowest to graduate, and basically none of the students that I serve ever have that I dream of owning a home. And so I want to show them through hemp construction that they can own their home and they can build their own home through a community land trust model. So I want to say thank you. I wish I knew about the presentation ability and I would have had that ready for 5 minutes. But again, my name is Coach Suni. I work here, she, her, hers. I'd like to acknowledge the Laktamish lands that I come from and the Navajo DNA that I came from prior. And I just really value all of your time and energy in hopes that we can create some synergy and some fun.
That's what we want. Great. Sounds like we have a good coach here. I love it. That's just fabulous work. Great. Do we have a few more people in the room who might like to talk, but before we go there, Stephen, do we have any people over in Friday Harbor who would like to say anything? And what about folks online?
Nothing yet? No hands?
Who are some of the people online? I'm just going to
Maybe we could go
ask.
over to Randy as well and hear from them.
Yeah, can we?
If they like.
Let's
Larry,
do
we do have someone from San Juan who would like to speak.
Good. Well, that's it. That's what we're waiting for. Go ahead.
I'm Allison Longley, and can you hear me okay? No.
No,
You can turn up the volume.
no, they should have a mic there.
Yeah, just right. They'll be
Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, good. I just wanted to say a couple of things. One is we do have a number of garden programs here on San Juan Island. And I think there are more on the other islands. And I'm a member of the Grange here, San Juan Grange. And we were thinking about having a garden program and concluding, well, there are other programs already. So we're pretty well covered on that, although we could talk more about soil and regenerating soil, I suspect. The other topic that I wanted to bring up, before I leave soil, I can recommend a movie. It's called Common Ground. We just finished having the Friday Harbor Film Festival here on the island this past weekend. And one of the movies I saw is called Common Ground, and I can really recommend it. It talks about a lot of the issues that have been brought up already. A very good introduction. So anyway, the other topic that I wanted to bring up is the issue of potential extermination of our orca whales and the salmon that feed them. And for this, we really need to think very broadly. It's still Cascadia, but it goes clear up to Idaho. And it's become very clear that the one thing that we could really do that would make a huge difference to bring back the salmon that used to be very, very numerous and are facing extinction now is breach the 4 lower Snake River dams. And we need to do that very soon. And that was the subject of still another movie called Covenant of the Salmon People, and it was very good. It was made by the Nez Perce tribe. And one thing that I would add to what you can find out ordinarily is the people to talk to ask them to breach those dams immediately are primarily Joe Biden and people associated with the Army Corps of Engineers. It doesn't hurt to talk to your Congress people, but it's not necessary for Congress to approve. This notion of breaching the dams, because the dams do not pencil out. They cost more than they are worth. They're causing extermination. They should simply, it's a matter of being, taking care of the public trust, which we should not be spending more on the dams than we're getting out of them. So I wanted to make that point. And there are a couple of websites that I can recommend. One is called damsense.org. Another one is called Dam Truth. if you want more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we've got a couple of people here in the room who I'd like to invite up. And, before I forget, there was one thing I really wanted to thank Farhana Lunat and Skagit Valley College for making this possible. And again, recognize Randy Martin over on the Friday Harbor campus. What I'd like to do now is in this room, I'd like to invite Jay Bowen up. He is an Upper Skagit elder, a fabulous artist, a friend, and he has words of wisdom to share. Go ahead, Jay.
I'd like to thank everybody for showing up today. Something as important as this. My name is Jay Bowen. My native name is Cluckadub. Our family has lived in the Skagit Valley for the last 40,000 years. And so we go back quite a ways. The one thing I recognize when I'm asked to speak is who's going to be here. Then I think, and I pray a lot about that, to have the right words come to me to present to the group of people. And I know when a group like this is gathered, you may not know it, but you are the most important people in the world. That's the truth. You're the most important people in the world. You extrapolate that just a little bit, what's your circle of influence? It wouldn't take long for us in this room to connect to almost every branch of government and business there is. Today we have choices. In 1,878 days, we will have no choices. That's a hard figure for people to really ingest, internalize. When my great-grandfather was born, he could see the end times. Up till a couple of generations ago, we talked about things in terms of decades. Unfortunately, now what's before us is we can count days. And one of the messages I share with the community, unfortunately, is something there are times for the hard words, and this is a time for the hard words. This group understands the hard words. In 5 years, we will not recognize the Skagit Valley. The world we're familiar with today will not be here in 5 years unless we begin to act on it in very formative ways. Things will change, and we will not have a decision in it because we'll be forced together for survival, or we're going to work together to try to turn back the clock. Larry and I spent the weekend together and came up with an opening conversation point as a baseline. I'm going to read it to you. I'd like to propose we look at a baseline in our region that can be marked as pre-contact to Western influence. A time when the land supported a self-sustaining lifestyle, not only one of surviving, but thriving. In our particular region, the area sustained a population of over 40,000 people at its peak. 40,000. When I was born in Mount Vernon in 1955, Mount Vernon, Burlington, Sedge-Woolley was not 10,000 people. We were living on a nature-based diet and building structures from nature-based resources. Proof that the population can survive and thrive coexisting with nature. That's a foreign sentence to a lot of people. Western theology of business has taught us that we are in opposition with nature. We're to tame nature. The Bible even translated it, the Western Bible translated it, you shall have dominion over all the earth. That was translated from stewardship. The original word was stewardship. But the powers that be wanted to change that. And the mindset has influenced our whole generation, our whole culture, Western culture, the United States culture. It's been influenced to the point where we're destroying ourselves. Our flora and fauna here were vibrant, and animal life is extremely diverse. Very diverse. There were turtles native to Skagit Valley. When I was a kid, I caught the last turtle. Somehow it got loose. Somewhere still out there, hopefully. Salmon were the crux of the Native American food, and it was so abundant. I heard stories when I was a child about how you could walk across the Skagit River on the backs of the salmon. I heard those from my aunts and uncles, great aunts and uncles, that told that first-hand story account of that. And 100 years ago, our tribe spent 20% of their time and energy sustaining their life. 80% of their time was at their discretion. I'm outlining a baseline here, okay, where this could lead us. We have a good example in our history as Native people of what the product of that is. We took it that time to expand our cultural base and our religious practices, which is basically spirituality. We have gone a long ways from this point in a short 100 years. My great aunt, who just died about 15 years ago, said, I got to see the first car, the first plane, the first train, the man on the moon. In her short life, she watched the demise of the world. In our effort to recognize our worldwide crisis, we may never be able to return to that baseline. But each effort, like each detractor, will move us in that direction. We have suffered 1,000 cuts against nature. Healing one at a time is the goal. We need to recognize we are part of nature, and our first job is to be a good steward of nature and enable each of us to be sustained. And I usually end my conversations with, yes, we are our sisters and brothers keepers. We are responsible for each other. The days we have left is the days of choices we have left. Great people working on good ideas. Looking out for people. Reaching out, trying to bring the community together. And probably about 400 or 500 days, they're going to be knocking on the door saying, please let me in your group. This group will be the most popular group in the world. And you're all going to be able to say, I was there day one when you weren't listening to me. Now you want to come join me. Because your damn house just burnt down. Because you turn on the faucet and there's no water. Because you look in the river systems and you find out you poisoned all of nature around you. And a beautiful scene we used to go to now has a stench to it. Then this will be the most popular group in the world. That's why I say the most important people in the world are here. It's not like we don't have choices now. I got in trouble with the HOA at Shelter Bay because I was burning my weeds. He said, "What? You can't have open flames." I said, I choose to burn them and pull them up as opposed to put chemicals on there. I said, I can see the salt water from here. I called the tribe and I say, hey, they're poisoning our bay. They're poisoning our bay. They're putting these chemicals on there. And it's 100 yards away. And whatever, and as you wonder why our shellfish are in decline. You wonder why the eelgrass is no longer in existence. Because we have all these herbicides going down there. They're gonna pass a law that's gonna ban all the chemicals in Shelter Bay for obvious reasons. They already, in their golf course at Snook Bay, they don't use chemicals. There are things we can do consciously, and there's things that we're gonna start doing unconsciously in 3 years. This group will determine what direction that goes and who's gonna be involved with this. Right now, everyone in this room and this whole group is trying to emulate my people, my tribe, our customs, our ways. It's very flattering. It's obvious to us. We have a great lesson to teach all humanity. And we need to understand that nature is our best ally in this. I was asked to do a report with Phoebe and 15 other leading environmental scientists in the world. All came together on a paper. And I called Dr. Fletcher, University of Hawaii. I said, I read all the paper, I understand all the figures, everything's great. But you are failed. And he's not used to being talked to like that. Dr. Fletcher, he's like the boss, okay? I said, the reason you failed is because it wasn't talked about last night at the dinner table. It wasn't talked about at the coffee table. Until you can find a way to communicate to people of this imminent danger that threatens every man, woman, and child on this earth and all the species, you failed. That's a hard one to swallow sometimes. We're very egotistical. We don't fail at nothing. Yeah, you failed. I was asked to do sculptures for the Snake River Dam. And they said this is a really important issue and we want to remove those dams. There's 134 species depending on this river. So I looked at all the information and trying to get a background, the history of it all. And I called them up, I said, you're wrong. You're wrong on the amount of species. They said, no. We've done all of our homework. We know exactly what it is, every species. I said, you're still wrong. But how are we wrong? I says, it's 1,835. Humans are a species. You forgot to include us. We're part of the ecosystem. I've been chased by a grizzly bear. That close. I instantly felt part of the ecosystem. I was one breath away from being, an amoeba, But it does bring you really quickly into you are part of the food chain. And we can never stop and let ourselves be excused from any situation. If you breathe in air, you can't be excused. What's the oxygen content today as opposed to what 150 years ago? You bring that up sometime in the meeting. Easy to look up. Less oxygen. What's the temperature difference in now and 100 years ago? Last week, we passed over the threshold of 1.5 degrees. Last week. And what happened was thank you for coming. They started saying, well, maybe we can pull off the 2 degrees. You gotta be kidding me. Mexico, Acapulco just got wiped out last week from a Category 5 hurricane that was less than 24 hours earlier. Was a tropical depression. Over there in Saudi Arabia, 20 inches of rain, one day, not even in one day. Rio Negro, Amazon River, biggest contributor to the Amazon River, drying up. Thousands and thousands of species are dying. Spain, big news today is that olive oil is going to go up because Spain's having a drought. People think, wow, I got paid $20 for a bottle of olive oil as opposed to $10. It's still there. It's just less of it. The climate is changing in ways that are tangible. The reason the Amazon's dying is really simple because it's a closed environment. We all know that. Rains, it evaporates, comes down again. Poor soil works on rain. Well, there's a lot less of the Amazon left anymore. So when you're in these different areas, and the area soon to come is the Skagit Valley, where we're going to be the headline news again. And a friend of mine says, well, don't worry, the federal government coming to help us. I said, did it help Florida during the hurricanes? They're still impoverished, destroyed, buildings destroyed. They won't help you. New Orleans, wiped out. They won't help you. Right now, northeast Oklahoma and southeast Kansas, huge drought. There's no way to help bring water to an area. And so this group of people, once again, are the people that the rest of the community is going to look up to and say, give me an answer. Give me an answer. What can I do? I just lost something very important. It's usually a job. The faucet doesn't work anymore. All over Oklahoma. We woke Oklahoma. Fracking. Towns are losing their wells because they're full of gas. They say, well, don't worry, the government will help us out. No, the government can't help you out. We are the government. We make decisions. If you give advice to people, then I would say, join a group. Pick a group, join it. When you make a decision for purchasing something, purchase with a little bit of a conscience, because that will determine what's offered to the rest of the world. So on behalf of myself, my family, and my tribe, I want to thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Bill. Those are some great words of wisdom there. Thank you so much, Jay. We have a few other people in this room, and I also know that there are some people online. Is Sarah Severin still on?
Yes.
Okay, well, there were some of the people that I saw there who I would love to have an opportunity to provide their perspectives on it. And we certainly have a couple more people in this room who we want to also share their thoughts. But I did want to give the people on Zoom, and I noticed a few who I believe might have some very good comments and thoughts to share with the group. So if anybody raises their hand, Stephen over there will let me know who's available to talk. And if not, we'll have a couple more people in the room, and then we'll turn it over to Joe. So is anybody interested, Stephen?
Sarah's been promoted to talking, so.
All right. Let's hear from you, Sarah.
I will just say I'm really tired. So, but I so appreciate this gathering. I have been really trying to listen, and I would love to listen back to the recording. I love the words of wisdom. And I can't remember names of speakers, but obviously our last speaker touched my heart in really profound ways. And I love this idea of using a baseline of pre-contact knowing that unfortunately we have, you know, what, 7.5 billion people on the planet right now. I would love to see, as a part of this, some discussion around the social side. Coming from an environmental background, I realize that most of what we struggle with is how to be good neighbors and in community with each other in a way. And I'm just I'm reflecting a little on what's happening in the Middle East right now. But I love the initiative. I love what I have heard so far, and I would continue to learn more. My focus as an individual is, after 2 decades of working in corporate America, I'm still kind of working on the business side and the legislative side with climate change. I work with part-time with an organization called Clean and Prosperous Washington. We helped to pass the Climate Commitment Act, which is trying to rein in greenhouse gas emissions in Washington state and set an example for other states, in addition to, work that California has already begun and other states on the East Coast have too. We would not have accomplished what we did if we had not brought in a very broad-based coalition, which included BIPOC communities and tribes. And I will say, if it wasn't for them, that legislation would never have passed. So, I would say the same message is true when we try to move things forward in these communities, that we are fully inclusive and respectful, and we learn from the past. So that is probably all I have to say tonight. Larry, was there anything else? Did I forget anything?
Oh, you have so much to talk about now. Kelsey is going to talk a little bit about the Madrona Institute.
Great.
And there were certain things that she wanted others in the Institute to talk about, but maybe we'll let Kelsey come up. But I think anything, if you would like to add anything about Madrona Institute's work, that would be terrific.
And Kelsey can prompt me if she needs me for anything. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds terrific. Why don't we just to keep some continuity, Kelsey, why don't you come up and then feel free, Sarah, to jump in.
Bye.
Kelsey's also going to talk about transition Fidalgo, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only reason I didn't line up here is my computer was charging, so. Make sure that this up. Okay, let me see if I can share my screen. We're just gonna stick with this view for now, I think. Just so I can see my notes as well. Yeah, as Mary and Sarah mentioned, my name is Kelsey Kittleson. I'm kind of wearing 2 hats this evening, one for the Madrona Institute, and then also one for Transition Fidalgo. I use she, her pronouns, and for the Madrona Institute, I work as the Community Engagement Coordinator. And primarily who we are, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, primarily focused on the San Juan Islands, but also the greater bioregion as well. We focus primarily on youth-oriented stewardship and environmental justice initiatives. We have kind of 4 primary programs: the San Juan Island Stewardship Special License Plate Program, the Coast Salish Youth Stewardship Corps, the Islands Climate Resilience Program, and the Stewardship Network of the San Juans. So starting off, this is our special license plate program. You may have seen this beautiful license plate on some cars around. It's a locally designed plate that was really brought into focus with very community-driven effort. So all of the proceeds that are generated are from all of the proceeds that are generated go directly towards local stewardship and youth-oriented initiatives. So this last year in 2021, we provided $22,000 in grant awards and $45,000 in 2022. Funds are generated and they're split into 3 different pots of funding. So the first one goes to the Coast Salish Youth Stewardship Corps. A third of the funding goes there, which I'll speak about in a little bit later. The second pot of funding goes into the San Juan Islands Youth Conservation Corps, which is a conservation corps specifically for San Juan Islands youth. And the third goes into a community grants program that local organizations can apply to. So in 2022, we had Friends of the San Juans, Alchemy Arts Center, San Juan Islands Agricultural Guild, Wild Orca, and Children of the Setting Sun Productions all receive funding through our grant program. And we will be having our 2022 grant report out on our website soon. So please stay tuned for all of the great work that has been happening. So far, we've sold over 1,700 plates to date, and we're looking for more. So if you're interested in receiving one of these plates, it's one of the best ways to support local stewardship and support a variety of really, really awesome grassroots projects as well. Okay, so the Coast Salish Youth Stewardship Corps, that is a program that's fiscally sponsored by the Madrona Institute and coordinated by a 100% Indigenous-led intertribal advisory coalition. The program serves Indigenous youth over the age of 14 and are from Coast Salish tribes who have ancestral ties to the San Juan Islands and whose families have been forcibly removed from the lands of their traditional homelands and waters. This program primarily empowers Native youth and tribal communities to reconnect with their way of life by providing opportunities to explore their Native heritage and steward their ancestral homes. The program offers cultural and environmental projects with really hands-on outdoor stewardship opportunities that incorporate Coast Salish traditional ecological knowledge and Western science. They work on a variety of intertribal collaborative projects from the Whitecaps of the Salish Sea all the way to the Whitecaps of the North Cascades as well. A few projects from this last year were a community canvas bake, a canoe challenge paddle, so no ground crew supporting these canoes, and then Huckleberry Enhancement Project. One thing that I was asked to share today was touching on our climate action speaker series. So over the past 2 months, the Madrona Institute was sponsoring a speaker series that was elevating various voices and projects that are focusing on really impactful community and climate action and solutions. So we had one that kind of focused on the politics and climate solutions at the state level, one that focused on adaptation, mitigation, and resilience, primarily in marine environments, and then one that focused on the San Juan County's climate action plan. We also had an introduction from Senator Liz Lovelet, which was wonderful. And our last one was a networking session for local climate action groups. So if you're interested in watching any of these, they're all recorded. You can just scan this QR code and they're all on our website. Some of our other programs that we elevate are the Stewardship Network, which is a collaborative coalition of various environmental organizations in the San Juans. Our working vision is to promote climate and environmental stewardship and community support throughout the San Juan Islands and beyond as well. We have our Stewardship Grant Fund, as I mentioned, that is generated all through proceeds from our special license plate sales. This awesome picture it's a little blurry, but there's 3 smiling students who are working on a recycling and upcycling project with Alchemy Art Center. And then we also have our Island Climate Resilience, where we primarily elevate speakers and hold speaker series such as our Climate Action speaker series, but also we held a Women of Color in Leadership speaker series earlier this year that has incredible women focusing on various climate and social action campaigns as well. So the best way to support us is to donate, follow us, and buy a special license plate. You can sign up for our mailing list, follow us on social media, and yeah, always feel free to reach out. Here's my contact information below, info@madrona.org, and just our website as well. I don't know if you want me to directly go on the transition.
No.
Okay.
I think one of you, Sarah. Sarah, if you can add any thoughts to this, and again, maybe provide your thoughts a little bit more. I know you've been going through a challenge that I'm very familiar with regarding water. But again, what's working in the San Juan Islands? And what are some of the challenges we're facing? And what are your thoughts about a path to solutions? Could you just share your thoughts, please?
Well, I think, my reflection on the challenges is that, especially since COVID, this has become a place of retreat and escape for people. And broadly, what that has done, it's pushed up prices. We have a lot of properties that are owned here for people who are making their money in the tech sector particularly, and it's driven up the cost of housing so that we can't really sustain what I would call a balanced community. We have 38% of our housing in these islands are second homes, and they're not occupied year round. In fact, many of them are only occupied, for several weeks a year. And that, in my view, is just unsustainable. But unfortunately, that's sort of, it's a difficult issue to tackle. Everybody believes we're not doing enough around affordable housing. We think that more could be done. And that's one of the intractable problems. Our water problem in this community, I live in a community with 44 households, and we found that our well was contaminated with aqueous firefighting foam at levels that exceed anything else in the state beyond the one site in Spokane in Airway Heights. One of their wells measured very, very high levels. So we've been grappling with that. But that's a community of 44 households. It's not the entire county. I would say, being on the board of Madrona, I am really impressed by the way that has evolved and the thinking, particularly our focus on our Coast Salish Youth Program, and recognizing that we don't have any kind of wisdom or authority to bring to that and letting that flourish. So what I would say we've done there is we've created the right conditions that are conducive for that particular program to go off on its own, and we simply become the fiscal sponsors. And we're also very focused on trying to find places for ceremony here in the islands for our Coast Salish partners to be able to reclaim some of the land that was taken from them. So those are kind of some of my reflections.
Great, thank you so much, Sarah. We're going to, Kelsey was also going to talk about transition pedagogy. There are a few of the folks in that group here in the room as well. But Kelsey, would you like to just share briefly your thoughts? I want to be respectful of the time and give Joe time, but I want to have a few more speakers come in here. But go ahead, let's tell us about transition pedagogy.
Yeah, we can keep it really quick too, so. Let me try this. I think this is gonna be a bit better. Yeah. So Transition Fidalgo, we're a 501c3 based in Anacortes, Washington. I work as the program coordinator for that organization, and we have multiple board members here, Lori, Bud, Warren, and probably some on Zoom as well. Oh, Phoebe as well. Sorry, Phoebe, yeah, so Transition Fidalgo traces its root back to 2006 when it first started as Skagit Beat the Heat, which was a very community-driven effort to have conversations about climate change and bring awareness around that issue. Originally, there were numerous initiatives to engage the Skagit community, including lectures, energy workshops, classes, forums, and more. And this also included urging Skagit County to pass a climate resolution and establish a climate task force, among many other various wonderful, wonderful initiatives. In 2010, Skagit Beat the Heat officially became a transition organization. So it joined the transition movement, which is all across the US and world. And it became the 79th transition initiative in the United States. So what we do, these are just a few of our programs. We have everything from forest monitoring. We have the Anacortes Forest Lands right kind of in the middle of Anacortes, and it's a beautiful, wonderful place. And one of our initiatives is to create a study to see how climate change is actually impacting those forest lands. We also have our Garden to Kitchen program. This engages middle school age students in learning how to cook, harvest, and grow this incredible food and local veggies and fruits. We have our community food stands, so ensuring that our local community has access to fresh fruits and veggies. Community seed share, so you can go to our library and borrow some seed, potentially bring it back. And yeah, producing really, really resilient seed networks in Fidalgo Island and beyond. And then we also have Fix It Days, so ensuring repair economy is throughout this area and making repair services really accessible to all folks, no matter your income, knowledge level.
I'd like to add, all these projects happen because people show up and help make them happen. You know, what I've discovered being on this board with Phoebe and Warren and Bud and myself is, you have a good idea and these guys will get your back and they'll say, you know what, let's try to do that. And together we put these ideas out there, and you enroll basically hundreds of people have stepped up to grow the 8,000 square foot community garden, to show up and work with kids. This goes all year round. These school gardens, you know, the seed share program, growing microclimatized locally, you know, heritage varieties of seeds, so we can feed ourselves in the future. Because we're on an island too. There's just this bridge there, but you know, I don't trust it to be there forever, you know? Yeah, I know. There's tsunami signs all over the place. But, you know, I mean, it's us that does it all, you know, that's you and everybody here. So I'm gonna go with, Jay, to say we are important people, because that's how this has all happened. I mean, it's just a volunteer who said, you know, I think that would be fun, I'll help with that. And then in the end, we're building self-reliance, right? We're building that into the future, so. It's powerful what we can do together, for sure.
Well said, Lauren.
I want to really quickly, just to respect the time, plug a couple of opportunities that are coming up. Fix It Day, we just had this last Saturday, but we have our annual resiliency gathering and dessert potluck that's coming up on the 7th, that we would love to see all of you there to hear about what's going on with transition, how you can get involved, get to know your neighbors, and eat some really, really yummy desserts. So yeah, I'll finish it up there.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, again, respecting the time, we're just giving little pieces, little groups, organizations, individuals who are working. And most of the individuals are working so hard on the project, there's always the question of, why do I want to go to another meeting? Why do I want to go to another meeting? What are we going to do? And I think one thing that we've got to consider is, like, I know the people, Lori and all the people at Transition Fidalgo, they're so busy working on their projects. They don't have time with their lives to do other things. We need more people engaged. We need to start in this room, and all of us know that we're just a tiny percentage of the people who in these two counties are working very seriously on various aspects of it, but we don't see the whole. We don't see the whole of it. And I think we have to continue to assess what is going on in our community, who is working on it, and then ask that question, who can we invite in to join with us? Because it's going to take a lot more of us than just the folks in this room, but we are the key to moving things forward. And with that, I'd also like to ask Phoebe Barnard and her husband, John Bowie, to come up here. Oh, just Phoebe, to come out here and talk about her great work. And then, unless there's anybody out there on Zoom who would like to share thoughts, we're going to move on with Joe's presentation. So Phoebe, take it away.
Thank you, Larry. Is there anyone else who needed to speak? Because I'll keep it very short if so. Okay, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here with talented, thoughtful, wise, inquiring people. Words matter in what we do. Relationships matter in what we do. I'm grateful to Skagit Valley College, and I want to repeat what Larry said about thanking them for this place. I want to thank especially for Hannah Lunat and Laura Caillou for that. But I also want to thank you, Joe, Claire, and Brendan, for an incredible process that has brought us all together. We need to do much more of this. And as Larry says, we need to grow us all. Now, John and I are people that work at the global level and at the local level. And why is that important? And why would I test your patience at the end of a long month and a long evening? Because I feel that the questions that we ask at global level need to be informed by those that percolate up from the ground and vice versa, so that we have a kind of biogeochemical cycle of ideas, that we have an understanding that everything is now changing, and that we are all trapped in systems which are not responding to that reality, but we all know. And Jay Klakuda expressed that so nicely. We all know. So the innovation that we can bring forward is important. Now, I'm a biodiversity scientist and a climate scientist. My husband, John Bowie, is a filmmaker. When we found each other just over a decade ago, it was magic, because we knew that we were both people who felt that we needed to be a small cauldron to address big issues. And so whether we're doing it at global or local level, I think we try to address big issues. And for the last 3 decades, I found myself with the most important question that I feel I wanted to answer. What kind of a society do we actually want from here on in? And just as importantly, how the hell are we going to get there from here where we are now? So I just want to mention 5 quick initiatives that we are working on. And Steve, I don't know that this is actually going to work, but we know here we have our...
Just call it out and I'll do it.
Okay. Next one, please. I wanted to mention a system that I set up a few years ago, which is starting to take place because it is relevant, very relevant to our bioregion. The Cascadia Biodiversity Early Warning System, also known as Cascadia Biodiversity Evidence, which was a kind of technocrat thing to tell us where are the species in our bioregion, what's happening to them, where are they changing and how. Now that's sitting there in hyperspace, not doing anything because agencies were slow to pick them up, but it's there. I want it to be recorded because we may still need it someday. Next. Those are the links to both a little film that we did about it and to the site itself. Secondly, John and I, as some of you know, and I'm really happy to be amongst so many friends and collaborators here, and hi, Sarah, if you're still there, and everybody else that I work with on Zoom. Many of you know that John and I are preparing this global documentary series called The Climate Restorers, it used to be called Back to Our Future, which nonetheless features many of us in the Salish Sea Cascadia bioregion. And it asks, do we need to accept this downward slope of dystopia and climate disarray and instability? Or do we still have the agency to reclaim over our region? So in this series, you will recognize a few people probably. Laura Pennington, Lakadog J. Bowen, Paula Sardinas from Seattle. I don't know whether she showed up in your meetings. She's an amazing woman working on climate justice. Two of these people will appear in the film. Liz Lovelet and Deborah Lekanoff are elected senator and representative from the Portia. And then some of you may know Haley Garreau from Children of the Setting Sun Productions. This is a story about the science and the people trying to make change over our future, to reclaim a future and to reclaim the agency that we always used to know we had, but we've been disempowered by all these broken political systems, these broken economies that we inhabit. So we try to focus on our region. Next, I want to mention John's community broadcast channel, which is periodically very active for Skagit County, TMV Watch. TMV stands for Transmedia Vision, our production company. And it's full of good news stories and difficult stories about identity, about politics, about social services, and so on. And then one of our productions is about otherness in our society here in Skagit County. People that are living on the margins of society and how sometimes they step up to reclaim that otherness and make it a superpower rather than a source of alienation. Finally, I want to mention this global initiative that I'm running that relates to the Climate Restorers documentary, because I want to make an appeal to those of you here who are working in ecosystem restoration, permaculture, agroforestry, to become involved in it. This is a big global collaborative that I have pulled together with a number of organizations. Sorry, maybe I have to point it at Steve. The idea here is to bring together ecosystem restoration people, climate restoration people. And these are two communities that weren't talking to each other. One of them kind of a big old community, and one a new fresh community that didn't really know how to talk to other people yet, along with youth leadership, women's leadership, and indigenous cultural bridges. And I would say to my friend Jay, he's a great example of a cultural bridge, helping all of us navigate these perilous, fraught times where we need to make change on about 12 different levels in a perilously short amount of time. Thank you. And then, sorry, thanking Jay. One last slide was just going to tell you that collaborative intends to bring together 8 billion people by 2050 to bring them into this restoration economy, because this is the scale at which we need to be speaking. We need a regenerative economy, a regenerative civilization, and we need to work at speed, at scale to get there, and to bring it down to activity on the ground, and to have that activity on the ground shape what happens in the world at large. Thank you.
Thank you so much. She's my hero. You know, I think what I'm going to do, in case there is anybody else who would like to speak online or over in Friday Harbor, is really turn the stage, so to speak, over to Joe, for him to, you know, having reflected upon what he's heard, which is just a tiny sapling, as I'm sure you've felt in other communities of what's going on. What my goal is from this room, I would like to reach out to all the other people who weren't in this conversation so that we can continue this conversation and lead to effective action in our communities, do our part to be part of the parts of the whole. And now Joe is not a very enthusiastic guy from what I've seen when I've been here. He isn't terribly enthusiastic. He doesn't have a lot, but let's give him a warm round of applause to have him forward, and maybe he'll get past his shyness.
I think I want to begin by really honoring something that you were saying, Phoebe, which is there's this really profound sense in which we are told, and Jay, you talked about this as well, that we as humanity are told that we are somehow separate, somehow wrong, and somehow the world will be better without us. This is just told in a million different messages. I mean, most of consumer marketing is telling you there's something wrong with you, so that you go and buy stuff to fill the hole in you that the traumatizing culture creates. And what I found in my own work, and what I found in the work that I see happening across this fire region, is that it's actually possible to restore entire ecosystems, to restore entire watersheds, and to restore entire regional climate systems. It's actually possible. No one tells us this. They just don't tell us. They tell us to focus on something technocratic and ridiculous, like how many molecules of carbon are in the atmosphere, to make us forget that what actually matters is our own relationships to ourselves, to each other, and to the larger web of life. And what I want to reflect, maybe to like be a mirror, is that you have some, I'm just gonna F-bomb this, right? You have some fucking awesome projects and people doing amazing fucking work in this fire region. I like a curse for emphasis. It's important because when we went to visit our friends at the Atlan Center, which is this young, burgeoning group of people trying to create an eco-village near the town of White Salmon in the Columbia River Gorge. And they're like, oh yeah, so right next to the edge of the land we're working on is where the White Salmon Dam was removed in 2012. And I'm like, what? They removed the White Salmon Dam? I knew about the L lot. I didn't know about this one. And then we got to walk around and see how much the land had restored in 10 years since that dam was removed. And I was like, wow, that was the Army Corps of Engineers, as the nice lady has said over in Randy's room. The Army Corps of Engineers decided it was not cost effective to keep this crappy old dam there. So they took it out. Around the same time as the Elwha Dam, and I didn't know this. I didn't know that there were multiple dam removal projects that had been successful. I didn't know that. That was sort of amazing. And then when I was in Olympia, I don't know how many of you have seen the big reflecting pond in front of the Capitol building in Olympia. Well, for decades, this is one of the stories we heard from several people. Some of them as adults who talked about their own children, and others who talked about when they were children and other adults. But like they'd go at 5 years old, look at that thing and go like, why are these dead fish here? Mama, Daddy, why is this water so polluted? And so after 20 years, they'd actually gotten $180 million of federal money, of US money, public sector money, to remove the dam around that pond, that lake. And they're going to restore the estuary of the Deschutes River. This is the very bottom of the Salish Sea. This big restoration project is about to start. Yesterday, we were at a place called River Farm over near Bellingham, up the Nooksack River. It's an amazing project. It's been around for like 40 years. It's connected to the Evergreen Land Trust. Actually, the people there were the ones that created the first Evergreen Land Trust. And then, a bunch of great stuff has happened. And we were there walking around. It's cold. It was one of those days, it was chilly. And we're like looking for the last bit of sunlight so we can try and see up on the mountains where they already have 500 acres of forest land that they've started protecting. They're about to secure another 1,200 acres, and they're working on securing another 6,000 or 7,000 acres so that they could create a community forest by reclaiming timberland. Just at the moment after clear cut, when the timberland is the worst financial investment, because you have to wait 30 years till you can harvest whatever you're about to plant, they're trying to mobilize money to buy up that destroyed land and set it aside and establish a model for forestry management that allows for the harvesting of trees together with education, together with restoration, together with other models of economic development to show that this is what we should do with all forests. And that was where we walked to the edge of the land and we looked at the Nooksack River, where they are working with the Nooksack tribe and have been working with them for a very long time. Couldn't have done the work they're doing. And they have made a huge amount of progress in bringing the Chinook salmon back up that river. And they're on their way. And I'm looking at it going, damn, they have this whole thing. This is huge. This is amazing. And then I learned the Nooksack River, the whole basin has no dams in it. How many parts of the Cascadia bioregion have a significant river with no dams anywhere in it? And then here you have the Nooksack. And I didn't know that. This is after seeing amazing regenerative farms and seeing some of the cool work that's being done in rewilding. And you could start to see a pattern. Right? There's a pattern. It's actually possible to organize around an entire watershed, an entire basin, and create a demonstration of how to create a better model for forestry management that can spread across Washington state. And as I stand in the presence of things like this, and ask myself, why doesn't anyone know? Well, the people at Inspiration Farm where we were staying were amazing people. Brian and his wife Alexandra and all the people that have been doing great work for a long time. They didn't know about this because, as Brandon has said, Regenerate Cascadia is just a cheap excuse to have a conversation. I love it. It's a little joke because it's cheap, right? It's like it doesn't cost much to get together. And then these people who've been at this work for 30, 40, 50, 60 years are some of them are meeting each other for the first time in the same damn watershed because we're so fragmented from each other. And so there's this set of big projects that most of us don't know about. That as we start to learn about them, we see that they're huge. I'm going to give you two more. One is down in Portland. Quinn took us over to meet some of his friends who work in Tryon State Park and the Tryon Creek Restoration. This is a place where in the middle of the city, They have almost completely restored the watershed of a creek. It's about 6 miles long. It's got beautiful forests being restored in it. There's beautiful collaboration with the First Nations people. The Friends of Tryon Creek is actually led by an Indigenous executive director. They're starting to bring cultural burning practices to teach people in the state park. And they have 1,000 feet at the very bottom of the creek where there's still a culvert on it. And they're about to remove it and have the funding to remove it. And they're bringing elementary school kids to see the completion of the restoration of a creek to return the water to the Willamette River. But then we went to Victoria. And Victoria, you know, across that little dotted line that I couldn't find crossing the Strait of Juan de Fuca. I was looking like, where's that imaginary line between US and Canada? Couldn't find it anywhere. I did see some, you know, seals and a couple of sea lions. I didn't see any dotted lines. We go into Victoria and there's the Friends of Bowker Creek. This is another about 5 mile long creek, except it's in the middle of the city. And like 90% of it's under concrete. And almost no one who lives there even knows there's a creek. And salmon used to run up that creek. And actually, one of the stories we heard was like 300 feet from the end of the creek where it drains into the bay is where the Indigenous people would gather for, you know, time memorial. And someone decided to put a trash dump there and cover it with dirt. You think this was an accident? Isn't that what they did at the residential schools? You know, where they create death and destruction and then bury it. And so they did this to stop the gathering of people in that place. And so Friends of Bowker Creek is just a group of people living in the community that have been working tirelessly for more than 20 years to daylight little parts of the creek, to create riparian restoration. One of them's at a high school that has native riparian restoration. And it's slowly inching its way in. But the people at Friends of Bowker Creek do not know the Friends of Tryon Creek. But I do. Brandon does. Because we visited each of them on this trip. And because Quinn's here, Quinn's our friend here in the back with a green cap on, he's really passionate about getting young people to meet each other across Cascadia and connect them to these land-based ecosystem restoration projects. We're going to be sure youth from Portland go to Bowker Creek and youth from Bowker Creek go to Portland. Because like, there are all these different projects. We touch the surface. We've been traveling for 30 days. We have seen amazing things. We've seen horrible things. We went to Avatar Grove. Do you guys know what Avatar Grove is? You might have heard of Fairy Creek, right? Fairy Creek's this major stronghold of resistance to stop the destruction of the last of the old growth forest on Vancouver Island. So let me tell you what Avatar Grove is. You take the bottom half of that Vancouver Island, you see there are roads all over it. All the roads go to nowhere because they're all logging roads. As you drive down Highway 14 from Port Renfrew back to Victoria, you see every mile there's another creek with a steep, narrow valley. And they've deforested the whole damn thing. They've deforested the whole damn thing. Turned into tree plantations. And there are a couple teeny tiny pockets of old growth forests that are still there. There's almost none. And so for us to go and visit with the people who have been staying, there were these 2 young women, 2 Indigenous women, both of them, actually one of them was from, like, where's she from, Ontario? The other woman was from here. And they have been at the encampment for 2 years without leaving to be sure that the bulldozers and logging trucks can't get in there. And we're sitting up there, we're like, what is this? How is this related to Eugene, Oregon? How is this related to Sahaley Falls and the beautiful moving water coming out of the Western Cascades in Oregon? And the answer is obvious. These are similar cultural contexts, similar ecosystem types, and they're coherent climate system, a regional climate system. And so, as we've been traveling, we've been looking for these kinds of patterns. We're finding them everywhere. And the other consistent pattern is that whether it's a group of 10 people who happen to show up at our event, or it's 100 people, every single person we've met has been absolutely amazing. We've just been like swimming in a sea of awesome human beings for the last month. Right? Like, look at you guys. You're awesome. And I mean, it's like been everywhere, right? It's been everywhere. And in every room we've been in, there's been at least one person. I think Cindy, you might be the one that who was part of the early Cascadia movement, was part of the environmental movement, going back 40, 50 years. And we're like, the elders of this movement are in the room with us everywhere we go. And you might agree with this thing that we've seen. They're so glad to see the young people. And we see this great intergenerational thread woven across Cascadia. It's already woven across, but it's not visible. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing, because what we're doing is really specific. Just like the way that mycelium allows the roots of trees to talk, it's specific. Right? What the mycelium is not what the roots are doing. So to use this as a metaphor, your projects, the things you're doing locally are like roots. You are anchoring into your place, you're gathering the nutrients, and you're trying to make things grow. What you don't have nearly enough of, and in often cases you have none of, depending on the group, is the mycelial thread that represents the health of the soils and the ecosystem that signals where the resources need to go. So that when one tree starts to get a disease, it signals through hormones that it's sick, and it tells the other trees to either come and boost its immune system or to get ready to compost its nutrients as a nursery tree, depending on the dynamics involved. So what we are trying to help create is a way of coordinating and communicating so that we can mobilize the resources within the same story across this bioregion. But we're also building the same thing at the next level up, the level of the continent. And we're also doing it at the next level up, which is the Earth as an integrated system. I also am trained in climate science as an Earth system scientist, studying atmospheric physics and cloud formation, and then a bunch of other stuff. And the talk that I normally give when I use slides is I show the planetary boundaries that we've crossed, and then I explain how they're related to the tipping points of the Earth system. I scare the shit out of people. This is not a moment to be worthy of cursing, because it's scary as hell. And then we talk about the nested levels of reality, about how local places have valleys and watersheds. They have organizing structures, and they are also nested all the way up to the planetary scale. And so Penny and I, my partner Penny down here, she and I in the last year have done bioregional activation tours in the Great Lakes, in Southern Ontario, upstate New York, and Northeastern Ohio. And we're starting to spread a pattern of regeneration across the Great Lakes, which is really the story that organizes the local people doing the work, because there's a lot of it. In May and June, we went from the headwaters of the Colorado River, in the western slopes of the Rockies in Colorado, all the way to the Sea of Cortez in Mexico, having conversations about how to regenerate Colorado. Most people think the Colorado River doesn't have enough water. And if you're familiar with this, the Colorado River is your textbook example of how not to manage a river. It's a shit show. It's absurd. The very first thing they did in 1909 was dig a 14-mile tunnel through Rocky Mountain National Park to Boulder Creek to send water to Boulder, Colorado, so that it wouldn't drain to the Pacific. Like, it's insane. There are so many stories. It's insane. But no one was really talking about what we actually need to do is restore soils and vegetation and ecological connectivity and restore the small water cycle. Did you know 800 years ago, there were these people called the Anasazi and the Hopi, and that they had horticultural societies in the Valley of the Sun, what we currently call Phoenix, Arizona? That frickin' desert was a vast green river valley 800 years ago. And there's evidence of cannibalism, of people chewing on each other's bones as they starved to death as it became a desert, when their monsoon pattern shut down 800 years ago. And there's lots of archaeological debate about the exact causes. It's not really clear. It's a complicated situation. But did you know that Arizona was lush, green, horticultural, indigenous peoples for like 3,000 to 4,000 years? Which means the shape of the land can hold that movement of water. The shape of that land can hold the movement of water. So we started talking about it. We went to Superior, Arizona, which is about an hour east of Phoenix. We started a conversation about the regeneration of Queens Creek. which is the Great Lost River of Arizona. They call it a creek, but actually it's born from the sacred lands of the Apache people. And then it runs all the way down to where the Gila River connects with the Colorado River. We're having these conversations. And here we are in Cascadia having these conversations. Penny and I live in Colombia and we're having these conversations in the northern Andes. And we have friends that are having these conversations in the mountains in the western part of India. And in different parts of Africa and different parts of Europe. And the conversation is spreading and it's bubbling up from everywhere. And there's a planetary conversation. And the thing we need to know how to do is so disturbingly simple, it's sort of like embarrassing, is we need to organize around our own landscapes. And then coordinate across them. Cascadia, when defined as watersheds, has about 430 rivers in it. That's at least 430 opportunities to organize a watershed. So when you look at the Salish Sea as watersheds, I don't know if you've seen the map. If I was showing my slides, I'd show it to you. I don't know if you know this, but the Salish Sea as a system is defined ecologically around the brackish water of freshwater and saltwater mixing. That's what makes this is such an incredibly interesting marine ecosystem because of the amount of fresh water. Did you know half of that fresh water comes in through the Fraser River, which is the river that runs through Vancouver? Half of the water in the Salish Sea that drains out of the landscapes is the Fraser River, which comes from the Columbia ice sheet in the Canadian Rockies. There's this huge continental connection. And so when you start to look at this and you ask, well, what would we need to do to regenerate the Salish Sea? We're talking about the northern Canadian Rockies as part of what we have to regenerate. We have to restore the snowpack of them. And then when we're talking about something like the islands, the common thread when we went to Gabriola Island, Vashon Island, and Whidbey Island, and I'm sure if we went out to the San Juans, it would be the same. First of all, a bunch of lovely old people and very few young people. Because the young people can't afford to live there. This is a common thread across all the islands. Another thing is there is some really nice farmland and really smart, forward-thinking farmers, soil farmers, regenerative farmers, agroforestry farmers, permaculture farmers. And there's a lot of land. But there is not a clear economic transition for that land to come to young people. Young people who want to learn how to farm, need to apprentice, they can't afford to buy land. It's like on Whidbey Island, there's this lovely guy, you might have heard of him because he seems to have touched all of the Salish Sea, this guy Ross Chapin, an amazing architect. His wife Deborah is the one who organized for us to come to Whidbey Island. They're both good friends of ours. Ross Chapin is working really hard on how to create community land trust models that can create collaborative housing and shared equity to transition farmland into reforestation and conservation land and agricultural land because a viable pathway to young people. And there are other people working in very similar ways in other places. And what we're finding is that these people are not collaborating with each other because they're already working at such large scales. You know, they're looking into this Central Valley on South Whidbey Island. That's pretty big. It's complex. Luckily, they have the Chinook Learning Center. They became the Whidbey Institute in this like 60-year history to work from. There's a lot of great stuff that's been going on there, but they're not really talking to people down on Vashon Island who are struggling with exactly the same challenges. Or the people on Gabriola Island who are struggling with exactly the same challenges. And even though we didn't get out to the San Juans, and some of you are online with us, I'm sure we'd find the same problems there. So we need to create learning collaboration around regional food sheds, around economic development models. And then we need to bring all of them into touch with the people at Finn River in Port Townsend, because they figured that shit out. Anyone here been to Finn River? Oh. They have these great ciders. Penny's got one of their hats. So just so you all know, Finn River is like 50 acres of farm that has become the home to about 20 local social enterprises that are all nested into a community space and then form a tapestry across their watershed. And they've been at it for more than 20 years. And so they are figuring out how to create a regional food shed and an alternative pathway into land stewardship and restoration. And when we talked to them, they said, and this is like people in Port Townsend, it's all right there. The Earth Repair Festival that happens every year, Skeeter and these great people, like good people doing it for a long time, they're all out there. And they're like, I think our biggest challenge is that we feel so proud of what we're doing and we see everyone around us and we want to help them with what we learned. We're like, hell yeah, let's set that up. And so you can see there's this, what in innovation is called the adjacent possible, which is when you have two things that are adjacent to each other. If you change what's adjacent to each other, you change what's possible. So the adjacent possible is a place-based strategy, which is organize your landscape and collaborate with your neighbors. And as we do this, we'll see that Vashon Island can talk to Whidbey Island. And they can both talk to Gabriola Island, and none of them care about that fictitious dotted line across the Strait of Montefita. Because they know it's fictitious. And so every place we've gone, there have been different personality, different unique features of the place, unique beauty of the place, unique strengths, but their challenges are the same. Which means bringing them into conversation with each other creates this pathway of innovation that they can share. And I just want to name one of the byproducts of our 30-day tour that Larry is exemplary of. For us to come and talk to you tonight, we need someone local to organize for us. Which means by visiting 14 places, we already recruited a local network of 14 organizing teams in 14 places spread from Eugene, Oregon to the Gulf Islands in 30 days. Now, are they all the same level of organizing? Are they all ready? Are the people that organize for us to give a talk the ones who are going to organize the regeneration of the landscapes? That's a good question. We're going to find out. We don't actually know. But what we do know is that people are ready for this story. They're ready for this level of work. They were not intimidated by the scale of the vision at all. I had a woman come up to me at Lost Valley at Eco Village just south of Eugene after I gave a talk about what we're doing. She gave me this hug with tears streaming down her face. She said, I've been waiting 40 years for this. I didn't think it was going to come. And so I want to say this because the world needs Cascadia. And Cascadia needs Cascadia. You all need each other. You have such amazing people, such an embarrassment of riches, of people and capacities, but you're very poorly organized for the scale of the problem. And so this is our challenge, is how do we lean into the natural intelligence of landscapes that show us how to organize ourselves to co-create with landscapes. So yesterday we went to this piece of land that was this guy Hunter. I don't even know who Hunter is. It seemed like he made a lot of money somewhere and his heart is filled with sadness and he's filled with repentance. And he's like, I gotta do something. So I'm gonna live off grid. I'm gonna minimize my ecological footprint. And I'm gonna buy a really messed up piece of land and I'm gonna rewild it. So he bought this really messed up piece of land. And then he went and found Inspiration Farm and Brian Kirklevitt, who's this amazing permaculture teacher, who's like one of the best at showing you how to make water create life in land. And on this piece of land, it's like it's shaped like this, where it's like got this dip. It used to be a wetland in the middle. And when you go on there and you see how a year ago they took a tractor out there and they dug these contour swales with these retention ponds in the shape that brings life. Like 3 months later, you can see the change in the life, and it's going into winter, right? Like we're in the quieting time, and even within a few months, you can see the life changing because the sacred feminine is actually the shape of land that receives life through water. And so we can see this happening. It's just quietly happening. The neighbors don't understand what the hell's going on. They don't know that they're about to see the miracle of life in a landscape from the movement of water. And we get to see it and walk around with the people who are doing it. And most of them are quiet, introverted, deeply spiritual people connecting to land. Which means they're not gonna be the ones to organize this. They're gonna need help. They're gonna need other people to help the organizing to serve what they're already doing. And so, I guess I wanna say that the lesson that we've gained from this is that we were right about our assumption. Our assumption was, if we traveled Cascadia having this conversation, it would be historic, it would change the trajectory of humanity. And it would be because there is so much capacity with so much history that is already doing the work and is ready to step up to the next level. And we saw that everywhere we went. And that's true. The thing I want to invite you all to do is to be sure that I'm not a liar when I say that. Am I a liar? Is it wrong? Is it not going to happen? Because you see, what's happening right now is, whether you call it Gaia or Pachamama or the Great Spirit, pick the language you want to use, she is calling her humans, and the humans who are listening are gathering. But we're not gathering with each other. We're gathering with the movement of water across land, but it's bringing us together with the other humans. The land tells us how to organize ourselves. And so some of the reflections that I have to share are in this message already. But the main message that I have is that not only is it far too late for our life-destroying culture to continue, it's far too soon for it to die. Right? Or maybe I should say it the other way, it's actually down by time to hospice. You know what it means to hospice, right? You sit in the presence of death and you honor life. So we have this great death machine and it is dying. It's killing itself. Nation states, capitalism, all that crap, it's all killing itself. We have to hospice and we have to compost. You know, we have to composting, right? Composting is what nature does already, but with humans guiding it intentionally. It's the guided decomposition into new life. And so it's time to do this on a big scale, and a big scale happens by doing it in parallel in a whole bunch of places on a small scale. But they're actually woven into each other through the natural ecological connections of land. And the movement of water across land, which by the way includes the movement of water through the atmosphere, the movement of water through the bodies of living beings. This is how we do it. And so I guess the one other thing I'll say is that a big theme, probably the biggest theme in all of our journey, has turned out to be the need for a learning ecosystem. This has come up everywhere. So again, if I was using my slides, I'd walk you through what is a bioregional learning center. Why did Dana Meadows tell us that this is the only way to organize back in 1983? And she was right, because she was a pretty sharp lady. That we need to create bioregional learning centers. We need to organize how we learn about the places where we live, how to reconstruct the geologic, the cultural, and the ecological histories of those places, and then imagine regenerative futures that restore the health and vitality to those places. Bioregional learning centers are the ways that we organize the learning to do that. But at the level of Cascadia, we found that everywhere we went, everyone was already living out a piece of the pattern of a bioregional learning center. Everywhere. But they didn't necessarily have this as a conceptual frame. Notice I'm not saying you need to use the words. I studied with George Lakoff and I used to do analysis and stuff. We don't get hung up on the words. It's not, you call it a bioregional learning center. It is, what is the concept underlying this? Concept is, how do you learn how to belong and care for where you live? And when you do that, you will be doing bioregional learning. If you ask, where does my water come from? And then go to the source of your water and care for that place, all of that is bioregional learning. And so what we found is that there's this huge broken intergenerational linkage. old people with broken legacies and young people with broken futures. And we need to bring them together. We need to bring the generations together. And we need to bring them together within and across place. For example, those kids at Tryon State Park in Portland going to Backer Creek in Victoria. We need to create a pattern language of semi-nomadic learning exchanges, like the Chautauquas of old. You know what a Chautauqua is? These moving conversations that move across the landscape to talk about whatever the most important matters are. Where if you were like Southern Baptists, like people where I grew up with in Missouri, you'd be having revivals, right? Revivals, you go and revive the great spirit in our hearts. We need to do this by bringing the young people into contact with all of our elders and mobilizing the resources to give the young people livelihoods. We should be paying them stipends to travel and learn and participate in the restoration of places. We saw some of that with the Madrona Institute through the selling of license plates, which is beautiful. What are all of the mechanisms we can use to do this? Turns out one of the most important mechanisms is to remove money from the situation. I got land, I've got a yurt, a young person could live in it as a work exchange and not pay rent, and part of the money that was needed just got taken off of the equation. Creating exchange relationships that allow us to do this with all of the resources that we have, money being a tool among them. And what I'm starting to see is that there are a couple of anchor places that could be absolutely transformational in this process. One of them is the Whitby Institute because of its history and its unique place in the heart of the Salish Sea. And the fact that South Whidbey Island is obviously, and anyone who's been in it, is an energetic power place of the planet. The indigenous people certainly know this, but actually a lot of non-indigenous people have arrived there for the same reason. And the Whitby Institute is holding an anchor to one of those places. And we're talking with the Whitby Institute about how to become part of this new story, and they're very excited to become part of this new story. They're actually in a struggling moment of finding their way again, which happens with organizations and places that have been around for a long time. You might have noticed Findhorn and Schumacher College on a global scale are in their own crises at the moment. There's a global version of this that's happening. But the Whitby Institute is a very interesting anchor place for creating a patterning of bioregional learning centers. But another one that we learned about, that's sort of an interesting one, is Fort Worden State Park, which is basically a campus. You know, it's like a military training place, and it's basically its purpose was to destroy indigenous culture. They didn't actually have to do any shooting of people, but they did a hell of a lot of destruction. You know, they put that base there to help basically disrupt and divide the First Nations people as part of their larger cultural strategy. And that place is there ripe for restoration. And here restoration is spiritual, which is to become an anchor place for integrating the cultures into the new future that's coming. Fort Worden is a place where our friend Rick Lucan and some of the other folks, Rose Madrone and others who are there in Port Townsend, are working on trying to cultivate a vision for Fort Worden to become a regenerative campus. And I could see it just I was there for one day. I've been there before, but during that one day, I was like imagining it as an anchor place for the regeneration of the Salish Sea to network with all of the other places, including this place right here, Skagit Valley Community College. Right, to create networks of learning. And Fort Worden is right on the spear tip, right, of the Olympic Peninsula, pointing out into the Salish Sea, connected with all the islands around it. And so there are these anchor places that have really powerful potential. Now, will it manifest itself the way that the people there are envisioning? Who the hell knows? But if we don't plant the seed, that we should be thinking of places like these as a web, as a mycelial web, then we don't see their true potential. Now, I'll add another one, Evergreen State College, where the first Cascadia Bioregional Congress took place in 1986. We got to hang out with Lansing Scott when we were in Seattle, who was one of the organizers for that, but did the artwork for the one in 1988. He's also super excited about the young people. And you can see that Evergreen State College has this really cool thing that as a student, you can enroll and then you can invent your own class. There are a couple of people there that have figured out how to hack this. Turns out you can have 20 people enroll at Evergreen State College, and they could go to the dean and request the same course and invent a new program. And there's funding available to support them to do it. And this is already accredited by the state of Washington. And so Evergreen State is a place for prototyping new new educational systems within academia. All of you in academia who have ever done it before, it's freaking hard to change things there. Talk about a bunch of dinosaurs waiting to die. Evergreen State College has a mechanism to invent new programs. And so it's just like, well, that's cool. We're learning all these hacking tricks. But Evergreen State, in the absence of the other places, is not what it needs to be. So when I think of all of our eco-villages, all of our permaculture centers, all of our ecosystem restoration projects, all of our established learning institutions that are engaged in this work, I mean, think of Hollyhock Retreat Center up in Cortez. Does anyone care there's this fictitious dotted line? Hell no, that exchange has been going on for decades. And so there are more. I'm not naming all of them. You guys know more of them than I do. I only lived in this region for 15 years. You all who live here know it better than I do, but these are examples of a pattern. How do we weave these places into the story of regenerative education for Cascadia? That is the single biggest signal to come out of these last 30 days. Is if we do that, we will mobilize money, we will form tapestries of local projects, we will cultivate sovereignty of those projects to manage their own affairs and be resourced, and we will learn how to do it together. So the opportunity is to create a mycelial web of learning across Cascadia to connect the hearts and minds of those who are already doing the work. And then create transition pathways for the young people who are trying to. That is the path to regenerate Cascadia. And we see it, right? Those of us who have been walking this path last month, we see it very clearly. That's the mirror I hold up to you. That is your opportunity. Now imagine the world learning how to do this with you. Imagine we bring this to the Great Lakes. We bring it to the Colorado Basin, and we bring it to the scale of Turtle Island. You think the world's not going to see? So I've been living in South America for the last 4 years, where the agroecology, the forest wisdom of the people of South America, the world needs to know about that. There's a lot that the world is starting to learn, and with ayahuasca and other ritual ceremonies and ways of connecting, there's a lot that's being learned. But did you know that the tobacco and the peace pipe of the North, that tobacco is originally from the Andes in the South, because these people have been exchanging for as long as they've been on these continents. That the thread line of regeneration for the world is the Americas. The Americas, that is the great symbol of 500 years of colonization and manifest destiny, is the part of the planet that is birthing the regeneration of the planet. With a lot of stuff happening in other places, but this north-south thread of the Americas is it. It's amazing what is happening. Absolutely amazing. People from all over the world are coming to the Americas to learn these things. It's indigenous wisdom together with ecological scientific knowledge woven into a tapestry. And now we need to weave it into our landscapes. And the way we weave it into our landscapes is through education. Because education is learning by doing, so it's also the doing. So all of your projects in the communities, all the work you all are doing, needs to become interwoven into this tapestry. And it does not yet exist. And it won't if we don't do it. So we've already begun. Larry gave us a really nice process tonight. Right? We set a little context, we name a few of the projects, we start to see the patterns that connect them. And we as human beings are more connected with each other. So those projects and processes are more connected with each other. QED, I proved what I set out to prove. Let's continue. This is how we do it. The magic is that it's mundane. It's conversations and friendship and organizing around land. And so I want to help this happen. I know that when Brandon and Claire came together through the Edgewalker Prize, and they're like, these great people in 140 projects, here are two of them a mile apart doing great things, and they don't know each other. Right? Like, we don't need everyone to know everyone, but we need the pattern to show us that we're the pattern. And so there's a lot more to say about the ways of organizing the funding and the collaboration and the knowledge sharing. We could go into that another time. Tonight's not the time for that. But we're actually getting to a good point of all of us going home and dreaming about this. So what I want to invite you all to do is to join Regenerate Cascadia so that you will tell each other what you need to do. Brandon and Claire are creating infrastructure to get themselves out of your way so you can organize with each other. What do you think that summit is that they talked about from November 3rd to 12th? They're creating a structure for you to talk to each other. And then they're going to gather those of you who are really good at helping each other talk to each other. Larry's been doing deliberative democracy processes. Please, more of that, right? We need these kinds of things. But where this goes from here is not for us to say. So the medicine that I carry, that I'm giving to you right now, is I want to sprinkle into your dreams that you will sleep and this will start to take form so that you will walk it into being. And that your children will walk it into being and their children will walk it into being. Because my sense is that regeneration of Cascadia is 200 to 500 years of establishing the pattern. Back to, oh, it takes a while to talk to the indigenous people, to become friends. The conversations are slow. This is slower than you think. We've got to make this happen in 200 to 500 years. That's the real reconciliation. But the forest will take 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years to be restored. The species that were lost will take 1,000,000 years to evolve again. So this is for the long haul. And the baseline we need to operate from is how many threads can you cut from the tapestry of life before it completely unravels? Because a true mass extinction event is unstoppable when you're in it. And we do not know if we're in it. And if we're in it, we could already be decades too late. And how could we know? We haven't even measured, 10% of the biodiversity of the earth. And that's without even getting into microbes in the soil and in our guts. So it's like, ooh, it's really complicated. But if we get to that baseline where we have cut too many threads, not only is it true that we're going to go away, and I've studied mass extinction, and mass extinction is when, at the level of order, remember kingdom, phylum, order, it's when orders go away. Mammalia is an order. I think all mammals. Orders go away when there's a mass extinction event, which is entire branches of the tree of life disappear. And so we're in this place where that is what is happening. And the way to weave the thread for life is to be like the mycelium in the soils and to connect our roots. And our roots are pretty deep, meaning our roots, those of us who came to these places and started helping, have been at it for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. The roots that are here, as Jay was telling us, go back a lot longer. The other thing I want to say is that every time I talk to indigenous leaders who really get the state of the world, because indigenous people are just humans too, there's humans too, we're all humans, is they're like, well, we need the best of science and we need the best of indigenous wisdom. We need them together. They must come together. And this is where we have the two-eyed way of seeing, which is that they come together not to become the same, but to walk together. And so as we walk together, we're going to find that we can see what we need to see by walking together. What I don't see, you might see. And only with enough eyes do we see. And so it's time. There's no time left to not be doing this. There is no time left to not be doing this. And the way that we begin is to realize that we already began a long time ago. But now we see what we are doing. And if we help more people see, then what we've been doing in isolation will no longer be alone. It never was anyway. It was never alone anyway, because nothing is separate. But if we don't feel it and experience it, we don't know it. The power of human semantics is that what we dream is what we make real. So now is the time to make this real by dreaming it. So I want you to go and dream this into being. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That was just so inspiring. I hope all of you, people online or in Friday Harbor are really appreciating this, but so many more people need to hear this message. And like mycelium, you know, what we have to do is really understand that we are connected and begin to strengthen those connections and then figure out how to work together based on a more life-affirming worldview. And so we're starting this work, but I just appreciate you and Brandon and Claire and your whole team coming here, and Steve. We just need to keep it going. And the real question is, so what are we going to do about it here in Skagit and San Juan County? How can we come together? How can we come together with the people up in Whatcom, Island County? We need to grow this. And there is a process to doing all of this, and I think it's very exciting. And the time is now, as you said. Anyhow, fantastic, very inspiring. Brandon and Claire, do you want to add any final points to this? What do you feel?
Okay, I just have to say that, come on, Brandon.
Please.
Is, first of all, thank you. This is amazing. And as a community artist, we are planning, the last weekend will be a conversation about community art, but to be able to bring out some of the threads and to be able to tell the story in a way that the community really can just start to dream into what is possible. Community art is a really powerful way of working with the people that have been sidelined. The arts don't need to be, they don't just need to be in the basket of commodification. They need to be, you know, communities used to not separate the word art from their communities. And I think that's where we need to start looking at art as a way of how we express ourselves, how we share our dreams with each other. And anyway, I can't not bring in how powerful that is. So.
Thank you. And Claire does fabulous work. She's fabulous.
Actually, this is some textile art that Claire made. Of course, we made it on paper here. This is on the cover of my book, which I feel so honored by. But this is just a little flavor of some of Claire's artwork. And just to name it, Claire grew up in South Africa, and she saw the power of music and movement to help bring apartheid to an end. And you can see the power of art as the story in the community is to transform and to heal the community. So this is the Earth Dance. That's a piece of artwork that has been made into a poster. I just want you to see it, just have a flavor of what our artists can show us that we can't see without their eyes. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you.
South Africa is one of the most wonderful countries in terms of bioregional planning, thinking, and action. I was really pleased to be part of that for a while.
Yes.
Is there time for questions?
Yes.
Yes, we're gonna get to it. I was just gonna ask Brandon, do you have anything to say? Are you? No.
I think everything that needs to be said is said.
I agree. So, great. So let's open it up. You have a question, and if there are questions or comments from anybody online or over in Friday Harbor, if they're still awake, you know, they should be after that. Please pose your questions. Go ahead.
So very exciting. it's really cool to think of regenerating, you know, and necessary, and that, so everything that you said, what I'm struggling with is is fossil fuels and the need to get off fossil fuels, so the effort put into these kind of projects versus the effort to stop fossil fuels. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Because in the end, maybe these things won't matter if we don't stop doing fossil fuels anyway. And then there's the whole issue of just transition and as we do transition, so.
This is a really complicated predicament. It's not a problem, which is to say, it's in a complex a web of interdependencies, and as you try to find solutions, you create the problems, and it's one of those wicked problems or predicaments. And so one thing I would say is that the most powerful healing that people can do is to actually heal land, to heal themselves. And as we do that, a whole bunch of things start to happen. Like we get into building soils, bringing water back into the land, bringing life back. And we find ourselves having much less need for external palliatives for the pain that we do, which is where most of consumption happens. You know, most of our consumption behaviors is that we become hungry ghosts, which is that we have this stomach with a hole in the bottom of it, and we can never quite feed it enough. And it's because we're not addressing the thing that's causing our pain. And most of consumer purchases and the consumption processes, which are, you know, built upon and make use of that energy infrastructure. Most of it comes from not filling the hole in our hearts that we keep trying to fill in other ways. So there's a whole realm of conversation about deep trauma healing related to this question. That that just generally doesn't come out in the discussion of fossil fuels, even though it's really related. Another piece of this that I think is really important is just the mechanized worldview, the idea that the universe is a giant mechanical clock, that the earth is dead, and all these like Western philosophical ideas that cause us to think that 200 years of sunlight stored in the bodies of plants, stored below the crust of the earth, is a good thing to just run our machines on, is all built on that idea. It's all built on that metaphor in one way or another. It's all connected. And so the deep way of creating change is to change our root metaphors. And so to move from fossil fuels are like fuels or something to run our machines or an input to the engines of our cars, all of that stuff. As we do this work of connecting with life with our own fingers, even if we hurt our fingers, is that we start to realize that none of it's a machine. And we start to undo that metaphor. I go to that level because the problem with fossil fuels right now is in at least two places. One is we have exceeded the carrying capacity of the planet, grown the human population way too large, did it in a really short period of time, and ecology has a way of correcting for that, and it's not very good for the 8 billion humans. And the population is going to come back down. And it has to. We just don't know how many species will go extinct before it does, and whether humans are one of those, but it's going to go back. And a lot of the biomass of humans right now is converting fossil fuels into human bodies through industrial agriculture, basically turning oil into human bodies. And then human bodies destroying forests to build housing for more human bodies. As you see that's the same hungry ghost. And a lot of it is about not having a mature spiritual relationship with death. And so for me, the question of a just transition, it needs to include, it's not limited to, but it needs to include, what does it mean to really honor every precious moment that we have and be in service to life when we are living within a giant death machine? But the nice thing is the machine is a giant illusion because it's just a metaphor. It's just a metaphor. And I like the Algonquin language for this because they talk about it as wetigo or wendigo, two of the words that they use. But there are different variations on it. But basically the idea is the human being becomes a cannibalistic monster. This is within the mythology of the Algonquin tradition, which is that the human being becomes a cannibalistic monster because their heart has been frozen in ice. So they become psychopathic, narcissistic, or lacking empathy or conscience. And as a zombie, or as an undead, as a monster, as a spirit being, they consume life and destroy continuously and everything. And this is the Wetiko. And Christopher Columbus was called a great Wetiko, the embodiment of this. And there are people who have written about it, and it's a really powerful metaphor, because the way to dispel Wetiko is to recognize it's based in a human capacity that we can't get rid of, which is the human capacity to imagine separation where it doesn't exist. Like to imagine your mind and body are separate, to imagine humans are separate from nature, to imagine men are different from women, like we're separate race. You know, these illusions of separation are conceptual parts of the human mind. And so this Wetiko pattern is undone by dispelling it, which is, notice, it's the undoing of a spell. And realizing the magician was me, that we actually are the ones casting our own spell, which is why we have to dream this into being, we have to awaken the dream. And so part of this just transition is to recognize those fossil fuels are life from the sun and the earth from hundreds of millions of years ago that are currently being used to destroy life in an endless cycle of consumption. That is not only soul destroying, it's just a crappy way to live. And so, I mean, it's not pleasant. And so the healing work, I liked when we were talking with Dr. Dan Longboat, who's at the University of Trenton, he's from the Mohawk Nation. And we were talking with him, Penny and I were talking with him a few months ago. And he said that the way that education was used as the primary weapon of colonization was, you know, with the residential schools in Canada, but they're equivalent everywhere. They do three things. They break the relationship to ourselves, they break the relationship to our community, and they break our relationship to land. And that's how they break it. What's the third one? The relationship to land, or to place, if you want to think of it as like an island culture be to place. But the healing is to do all three simultaneously. I reconnect to myself. What is my core being? What do I need to express into the world? What is my unique gift that I bring? Who am I? How can I be sovereign as me? Which I cannot know without being connected with others to show me who I am and who I'm not. Which means I need to restore the relationship to myself and the relationship with others in the same process. But it turns out humans cannot do this without belonging somewhere. Think of the Hebrew tradition, the Jewish people who are looking for their home. We need a home. And 99% of human history was entirely hunter-gatherer because humans co-evolved with landscapes. And our semantic systems, you know, our first evidence of conceptual metaphor was with the tool makers that would look at a rock and see it as a spear and turn the metaphor into a real tool. Homo habilis about 2 million years ago. So 2 million years ago, we have clear evidence of metaphor. From then on, humans are not complete without their semantic identity being grounded to place and belonging. And so we cannot restore our relationship to our people without restoring it to our place, which is why most indigenous names for people is actually the name for their place, because they don't distinguish the two. And so the way to deal with the just transition is to transition back into being home, which actually helps us address the issue of fossil fuels, because we'll very quickly start to see we don't even know where home is if we don't touch it. And so this healing of land and place allows us to heal all three simultaneously. And the issues around fossil fuels that are never getting at the root causes, we start to address them there. And then we can talk about things like, so how do we get energy for this place? You know, how do we build our houses? And we start to see that we are connected at those three levels, connected to ourselves, connected to our community, connected to our place. And then the question of fossil fuels is something that can be addressed in the community. And you can see how we're not able to address it in the community now because so many ways that we're broken, that we're separated. So restoring the wholeness of being across all three levels simultaneously is how we deal with fossil fuels. Because all the rest will come from it. Yeah, Great question.
Wow, that was a beautiful answer. Takes me a while to digest.
But it turns out it's really simple. It's like, the way I deal with the core issues is the root cause of our problems is the illusion of separation that cause us to break sacred bonds. And then we restore them. And as we restore them, we come into alignment with right relationship. And then as our Taoist friends would tell us, right action follows. This is Wu Wei, right? Wu Wei is that right action follows from right being, and right being is right relationship. The Catholics call that the state of grace. It's the same thing. You know, and there are different languages that do it. But right relationship for humans is a story we live out, and a dream we manifest. That is how I connect to me, how I connect to we, and how I connect to place, which is the large we. The we that includes all of us. That's why you have the otter people and the orchid people, and et cetera, because we is much bigger. So, so yeah, great question. Are there any other questions or comments?
Compliment. You're the first Anglo person I've ever heard speak that understands the indigenous perspective that spans hundreds of years of the value of what we have long understood as our relationship to the spirit world. We don't have a name for God, we just say the creator. And how we play a part and a role in that. And you've done an eloquent job tonight of putting together the values that I grew up with. My world understanding that what we were taught, we're taught when the Western people came here, they were going to edify us and teach us about the world and all the cultures. And instead we told them about the world and all the cultures. They were way behind the curve, and our relationship to them. And we always had an understanding that the world is only one family. And you very ultimately pointed that out right now, our family in Shepherd. And certain members of the community are reaching out to take care of the rest of the family. But I've never heard an Anglo person understand what we have lived and experienced and traumatized over the last several centuries of experience. Thank you.
Yeah, this makes me want to just briefly tell a story, which might be a good way to close. A year ago, Penny and I were among the organizing team. Actually, Stephen was part of the team too, where we organized an event in Barichara, Colombia, called Refi Barichara, because we brought together people from the regenerative finance, Web3, and crypto world, and we wanted them to integrate into the place. So we created a 5-day experience of immersing them in about 20 local regenerative projects, and it was really powerful. And we invited some of the medicine women of the community to hold ritual and ceremony. And what they said, they pondered on it, and they said, we will not be at your event. It's not appropriate. This is not the right way. What we will do is we will hold a ceremonial fire starting 3 days before you begin to cleanse the intentions of the people coming here to land in our territory. And we will hold the fire the entire time that your group is here for 5 days. And then we'll hold it for 3 days after. Penny and I woke up on the end of the 5th day of the event, the last day of the event, with this like shock, like someone had punched us in the stomach. We're like, we are ready to ground ourselves into Barichara, to really take root here, to help regenerate things here. And instead, we felt the arrival of what the Kogi people call the third world. Or the eagle and the condor is the same, right? So for those who don't know, the first world is the world of ancestral knowledge and wisdom traditions, time immemorial. The second world is the world of modernity with science and technology and the modern arts and many things. We need both, and we're now entering a new world that has never existed before. It's never existed before. The world of the indigenous planetary. The indigenous planetary with the best of science and technology. We're having satellites in space tracking weather systems might be helpful. And so there are these ways in which we have not been in the new world. And so Penny and I awoke that day feeling we are in the third world. And we felt it with those women. And what we thought we had to do was for the next 2 years, travel the world and activate the planetary network of bioregions. And that's why we're not in Colombia now, doing the work that my ex-wife is with my daughter, places I really belong. And it's because we had entered this world. And so I just wanted to tell that story, to say that this awakening of consciousness is pervasive. And those of us in these activation processes are at the leading edge of it. Because it's going to reveal itself very strongly in the next 2 or 3 years, that the earth is awakening. Her guardians, her servants, the ones who come to serve the family of light. And we're going to build upon everything we can. So it is upon us now. Thank you so much. It is an honor. So thank you, everyone. Larry, would you like to close us out?
Wow, it's just been a special day, Joe. Really appreciate it so much. And Brandon and Claire and the whole team, it's really beautiful, really beautiful. And I think there's one thought that has come through this that I think was just mentioned here that is really important. And actually our friend who, Henning Semsdorf, who is just marvelous. And if in the climate action series, he talks, but
Cantankerous was the word he used.
Cantankerous, what he's doing on Lopez and those people are doing, he's just amazing. 86 years old, full of life, amazing. But he said with all the work that he and his wife, who used to be professors at WSU, through all those years and the books that he's written, which you can see on his site, it was very, very interesting. He said the one thing that stopped the universities from ever publishing his work was the fact that it embodied all of this in a spiritual context. And just the word spiritual immediately does all this stuff up. But this is really the core. This is the connection. This is the mycelium. This is the connection. We're beginning to find each other now. We're beginning to find each other and recognize we've always been interconnected. And so the question that I would leave with all of you and anybody who's still watching is, how do we come together in our communities and really begin to take this vision further? Because it has to start locally. And with our small group, we need to bring in all the other people who are working on their projects and seeing themselves working alone, need to understand how they're connected in the whole, and what we can do and how we can continue to invite more and more people into this conversation that actually leads to impactful action to get us on the right course, on a life affirming course going forward. So thank you guys for coming through here. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I can't wait for November 3rd through November 12th. I hope everybody is going to participate in this conference as we really begin to develop our path forward. And also, while we're looking at the whole Cascadia bioregion, the main work that we need to do is in our communities right here, and we have the power to do it. So let's make it happen. Along those lines, if anybody wants to work with me, because God knows that when I was putting this together, it was challenging, and I didn't get everybody that I want in the room. But contact me at Navigating Our Future, Larry at Navigating Our Future, and the Regenerative Cascadia project, because I really want to carry all of this forward. Yes.
And I'll just say, for those who don't know, that this man took on the yoke of organizing this when he was just having COVID and moving house and dealing with all kinds of drama, and nonetheless stepped up to the plate when most of the rest of us somehow managed to let him. Thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Let me tell you, it was all worth it for this evening and what's to come.
Yes.
That's what I'm looking for. I want to see how we move forward together. So anyhow, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Okay, I guess that's it. That was. Really from the heart of
Yeah, well, we're gonna be more.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, definitely.